And it looks like we're live, dude. Hello,
Hello.
ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
I'm here with my good buddy Ted Efthymiadis.
Yes. And what are we talking about today there, Mr. Bill?
You're gonna talk about, because I'm not a protection dog trainer, and so
Yeah.
you've done some protection dogs training, and we're gonna talk about that, and then we're gonna talk about how that has helped you become a better dog trainer, and especially working with aggressive cases, identifying them, labeling them correctly, all that good stuff. So what got you into protection dog industry? Hey guys, Jackie from Australia, first to join us. Hey,
Hey,
Jackie.
Jack. Nice to see you. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on, Bill. Always a pleasure. Always like having a chat with you. That's for sure. And hopefully that I can help educate some of our fellow dog trainers here a little bit today. But yeah, the topic being how working with protection / sport dogs has afforded me some knowledge going into working with reactive and aggressive dogs. So maybe what I should do is just go really, really briefly into chatting about kind of how I started with dogs, and then how that kind of brought me into the whole rehabilitation thing. So
Cool.
Really quickly, my first dog I got about, 15 years ago or so. And he was like an Australian Kelpie, maybe lab mix or something. Really intense dog. I didn't know anything about dogs. I didn't even grow up with dogs. So I didn't know what the heck I was doing. In over
Really?
my head. He had a lot of really bad predatory aggression, and he had a lot of behavioral problems and stuff too. So I ended up going to a bunch of positive only trainers, and they just took my money and lied to me all day long. So I decided I have to figure him out on my own.
Tell me, hold on 1 second, Ted. I want to stop you. What do you mean they lied to you all day long?
Well, they lied to me all day long in the sense that they had no problem taking my money, knowing the specific issues that I was having, and yet not actually having the abilities to be able to work with those issues, right? Like, okay, well, you're going to take money from somebody who wants to be able to let their dog off leash at the park, but they can't because their dog is, chasing raccoons up a tree and, grabbing them out of a tree and killing them right there in the middle of the park. Like, so why would you take money from somebody and tell them that you can get their dog to have a perfect recall, have their dog, not be acting in a predatory manner if that's not something that you can actually provide? So they had no problem trying to convince me that they could do that, until I got to the point where I was like, I have been doing this for month after month after month, and it is not getting any better. Right. So
Yeah.
I won't go on too long about that because I don't want to dive too much into that. But in reality, I just had a dog that had a lot of problems. What I ended up doing is I ended up figuring things out on my own, and with help from actually a police dog trainer in Australia. I met on like some online police dog forum, like before like YouTube and Facebook like even existed. And he ended up helping me. He taught me about e-collar training and whatnot. And so I ended up fixing my own dog. And then I was so excited that I could take this dog anywhere. I could do anything with him. And then I ended up getting my first Malinois. And
dang, dude, you
exactly,
went right into the fire.
So I got my first Belgian Malinois. I've owned three in total since. To me, I was like, I was tapped out with that Kelpie. Like I started seeing these videos online about protection work and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get one of those dogs. Like that's incredible. Like I was so into dog training because I was able to fix my own dog with the help of this, with the e-collar and this police dog trainer in Australia. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I actually like training dogs now because I can see that there's a difference if you do it properly.
Right.
So I got super into it. I ended up finding a really, really awesome dog. He was 5.5 months. I still have him this day. He's getting old, but he's still kicking, and that was kind of what set me on the path, and kind of like how I got into those things first. Now, I also want to stipulate the fact that I am not like a guru of a protection dog trainer. I am not. If you ask anybody that knows anything about protection dogs and you mention my name, they'll probably be like, Ted who? Like, I'm a nobody in that space, okay? I do not want to make it out to be like I am some guy who's training these dogs, selling them for $75,000, or like this high-level Schutzen IPO trainer. I'm not. I just never have been. I've never been competitive. I've trained my own dogs in French ring sport and IPO, which we'll talk about, but I am not a guru when it comes to those things. But I learned some really, really amazing lessons, which I'm going to share with you today, by taking my dogs through some of those different sports and protocols. So we're going to talk about some of the different ones and some of the things that I learned specifically from teaching my dogs those things, and how it all came full circle after starting to do those things. Once I actually became a professional dog trainer, I started to get all these phone calls from people saying, hey, do you work with aggressive dogs? And I just be like, no, have a nice day. Like I was getting all these people asking me if I worked with aggressive dogs, until about the fifth one called me in like a week. And I'm like, I have no idea how to do that, but if I'll take a crack at it, I'll do it for free. Okay. Cause I have no idea. I started working with aggressive dogs. I found that I had kind of a natural talent for it. In reality, it was because of my past sport work that I figured out a lot of this stuff already. And then I ended up, starting to hone my skills there. I ended up training under Duke Ferguson for many years, as well as other trainers. But it's really cool how now all these years later, I look back and I go, oh my gosh, I had no idea at the time that when I was working with these aggressive dogs and I was starting to hone my skills, there was so much that I learned in those formative years and training protection dogs and training sport dogs that now has actually given me like a massive leg up, right? There's a lot of techniques that cross paths when it comes to rehabilitating aggressive dogs and making dogs aggressive, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine line, and it has to do with timing and, recognizing the body language and using that dog's, communicating with that dog and seeing what stems from this aggression, or where this aggression stems from. But I can see a lot of times these quote unquote aggressive dogs, I mean, they're serious dogs that just need an outlet. They need structured learning. They need, they benefit from that stuff. They chew it up and they like it. And you can actually see, the aha moments and the connections being made. And as you go down that path, the relationship between you and that dog definitely becomes stronger, right?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those weird situations where it's like a lot of people would say, like, if you've got an aggressive dog, the last thing you should ever do with it is to teach it like protection work or bite work or something like that. But sometimes, especially if it has the right genetics, it can actually be like an incredible outlet for those dogs, right? And so that's something that I've done in the past as well too. Not something I do every day, because I know that most of my clients are not going to be consistent and constantly working their dog in protection and whatnot. So we have to use more traditional rehabilitation methods, but it is definitely pretty fascinating regardless.
Hey, Jackie wants to know what the police dog trainer's name was.
Oh, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. He was a little bit older when we were chatting back then. So I would assume he's probably retired. He was probably in his late 50s back then, but I wish. I don't even know if I still have access to that form. I don't even know if it's around anymore, and if I could find his name. But I owe a huge debt to that guy, that's for sure, because he was willing to tell me like it is. And anybody that knows me knows that if you call me, this phone right here, this old clunker of a phone that doesn't get text messages, you call me on this, and I'm going to tell you the way that it is. I won't hold anything back. I don't care I don't care what I need to say. And it's because of that guy, right? He told me what I needed to know. No, you need an e-collar. These people are lying to you. This is how to do it. He told me straight up, crittering protocols don't work. You can try them all day long, but here's what you actually have to do. And he was absolutely right. So I don't know his name, unfortunately, Jackie.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, a lot of times in a pattern of that I've seen while talking to some dog experts during these little chats that I've been doing is that, these people that have difficult dogs, and we fall in love with these dogs because they're our dogs.
Sure.
And something goes awry, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And I get that it doesn't feel good to correct a dog. It doesn't feel good a lot of times to be disciplined with the structure and working with the dogs all the time and keeping on a schedule. But doing what's right doesn't always feel good. And I think that a lot of these trainers, they kind of lean towards that feel good emotion. And people are 10 times more likely to make decisions based on emotion than they are on pure intellect. And a lot of times by leaning into that, they use that in their marketing as well. And they do a disservice, in my opinion, to a lot of these dogs that really could use a much better way. And as people that work with these animals, it is our duty and our obligation to find the best way. And the dog is the expert at the end of the day, right?
And really, at the end of the day, isn't it the easiest marketing in the world to say, hey, we're going to give your dog a bunch of treats. Your relationship is going to get so much better because, you're going to be doing all this engaging stuff with him. He's never going to have to be uncomfortable in this process. We can take all the stress off of his life and whatever. Like, isn't that 1,000 times easier to sell as a dog trainer?
Absolutely.
Like, we as balanced trainers have to be like, well, actually, your dog just attack the dog next door and now he needs 50 stitches. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable if we want to get him to be safe around other dogs. Like, that's really hard to sell to people, right? And so, it's just the name of the game when you want to be realistic and you want people to know what needs to happen moving forward. That's just the way that things work. It's like with surgery, like surgeons don't try to, it's like, oh, well, we'll just wave a wand and everything will be fine. And we'll just do a little bit of Reiki on your leg and, your busted femur will be perfectly fine. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. We're going to have to cut you open. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to need pain meds, but you'll get through it and you won't have to walk like a duck for the rest of your life, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah. If you can walk,
well,
and then that's,
Yeah, it's the same thing. But, regardless, it just comes down to like, what do you want to market? What do you believe in? Obviously, a lot of positive only trainers believe in what they're trying to progress in the industry. They believe that it is the best way, which I can't fault them on if that's what they believe. And then obviously balanced trainers, we have our own thoughts and all that good stuff.
Well, and it works for some type of dogs, and that's not what we're talking about here. There's some soft dogs that are eager to please, dude, that, if you look at them crooked, they're going to, be crushed. But, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about high maintenance, aggressive cases and protection dogs, working dogs, working lines.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. So why don't we get into, I just wanted to chat about kind of the major difference between protection dogs and sport dogs. And so we're going to talk about some of the different sports and stuff like that. But essentially, you want to lump protection dogs in with police dogs typically, right? So these dogs, we're going to talk about some of the different drives, but these dogs, the goal is essentially to get the dog to understand that the person that they're supposed to be engaging with is a threat. That's what makes a protection dog / police dog. Okay. So it's not about fun. It's not about a game. It's not about anything like that. Right. So it is a threat. So we're going to talk about some of the things that go along with that. And then you've also got some sports that have a mix, right? So there's lots of different sports. There's some ring sports, which some of you guys may have heard of. Probably the most popular kind of protection dog sport. I do in air quotes because it's not really producing a lot of protection dogs, but IPO or Schutzhund, which are essentially the exact same thing. Those sports, they're not really producing protection dogs, right? They're producing dogs that do these incredible
in the arena, in a kind of a
exercises, thousands of repetitions over and over and over, right? So
without real world implications, like
exactly. So those dogs are trained to do bite work with a sleeve on, right? And so I can only speak for the large amount of Schutzhund IPO dogs that I've met in over the last 12 years or whatever it's been. The vast majority of those dogs, given the opportunity, would not actually bite somebody if you gave them a command, unless they were wearing a
sleeve.
A sleeve.
Or they're conditioned to that. They're conditioned to the equipment.
Conditioned to that. They're not trained to do that, right? And so that doesn't make them any better or any worse, but most of these people are not convinced that they have protection dogs. They know that they have wieners, and they're okay with that, right? They're trying to get points. They're trying to get ribbons. They're trying to get to nationals and the worlds and all that kind of stuff. They don't care about having a protection dog because they know that if they do the least amount of work in protection work, they can get their dog to run out to the end of the leash and bark, and that is the most they will ever require, right? There is no thief in the world that is going to challenge a 90-pound German Shepherd barking at the end of the leash. Like, that dog doesn't actually even have to bite, right? Yeah. And so all these people know it, so they don't bother taking the next step and proofing the dog and making that dog really sharp. So the first sport being Schutzhund or IPO, which are essentially the same sport. And most of those dogs are not really protection trained. It's fun to them. It's a game to them. It's their favorite thing to do in the world.
They recognize blinds and sleeves and all that stuff.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Right. They do tracking, protection, yep. And obedience. So that's how they're judged. There's also, there's lots of different.
I did a podcast or one of these live streams with Jeremy Majors where we went and watched some of the Schutzhund. So if you want to know more, check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. It's fascinating stuff for sure. But that's what you get with Schutzhund, right? So they're doing bite work, they're doing obedience, they're doing jumps, and there's also tracking titles and stuff that you can do as well too, right? So that's that thing. Those are not technically protection dogs, but there's a lot to learn from these IPO dogs, which is really interesting. So then there's another sport called PSA, Protection Sports of America.
Right.
These dogs are a little bit closer to protection dogs because they actually proof them in situations to essentially make it more apt that this dog is actually going to do what it needs to do if there's a conflict on the street. So they do, muzzle fighting where the dog has to bite in a muzzle. They do carjacking scenarios. They do real life types of scenarios, right? And so typically those dogs are a little bit more towards the types of dogs that you could actually trust if you wanted to do protection. And then you've also got KMPV, which is essentially a Dutch police dog sport, which is essentially the selection process for Dutch police dogs. Really fascinating sport. If anybody's interested in this stuff, look it up. You've got all these civilians creating or breeding and training their own dogs. And then once they pass the certification in KMPV, they can sell that dog to a local police department. So just fascinating program. Those are typically pretty serious dogs. They need to be essentially police dogs. So it's technically a sport, but it's also producing real dogs. And then you've got the ring sport dogs. So you've got French ring sport, Mondial ring sport, Belgian ring sport. Typically these dogs are very high prey drive dogs, and it's just a game to them for the most part. They're not all that serious. They love biting the bite suit because it's the best thing in the world to them, but they don't hate other people or, they're not threatened all the time. But those are basically the major differences between some of the protection dogs. So we lump the protection and police dogs into one category typically, and then sport into another.
Hey, Sarah Baker says hello.
Oh, and, hello, Sarah.
John nice Sparks says he only trains nice dogs. Yeah, you do.
Sure. So going into things a little bit more. Basically, what you need to do when you're working with any of these protection or sport dogs, you're basically trying to get good at one or two different drives. So the sport dogs are typically going to be worked in what we call prey drive. And some of those sports will also work in a defense drive as well, too. The protection dogs and the police dogs are also worked in those drives. So basically what prey drive is, there's so many different ways to classify prey drive, honestly, but prey drive is essentially, at least the way that I talk about it, it's the drive to chase and acquire, right?
Okay.
Whether that be chase and acquire an animal, a dog. Dogs can have prey drive towards people, which is really rare, but it does happen, or a tennis ball or a bite sleeve or a bite suit or anything like that, right? So these dogs are very visually stimulated. They love chasing, grabbing. Typically, these dogs love playing fetch for hour on end, that kind of thing. Sorry, Bill, what did you say?
I said they're predators, so think about what a predator would do. And if they want to achieve something or if they want to get something, then that's what they do, whether it be for real or mock situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right? And that's a good way to put it, is that just because these dogs want to chase, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to kill, right? That's why I say acquire, right? So a lot of these dogs, like, they don't know what to do with it. Like a border collie who's chasing a bus, they don't know what they're going to do with the bus. They just think that they have to chase it, and then I'll figure out the rest out later. So this is a drive that is that you're naturally going to be selecting for in a dog before you start doing protection work and that kind of thing, right?
Yes.
It is genetically motivated, which means if the dog has zero prey drive, you are not taking that dog to any level of protection sport prowess. It's just not going to happen, right?
Maybe a doorstop, maybe to protect. Like
there you go. Stop him at the door. But in reality, like, this is something that the dog either has or it doesn't. Like, you don't see retriever trainers who are training these like amazing hunting dogs, trained dogs that just have absolutely no desire to retrieve, right? Yeah. Because they can just go and get one that like lives to retrieve. Like, why would I take years trying to build that into a dog when the dogs that are being bred for this 95% of the time are going to have that desire, and then I'm just shaping that. And so anytime you're working with sport dogs or police or protection dogs, you're always, every single one of those dogs has to have a pretty developed prey drive. There's no way around that. And so what you do with that prey drive is you start out with very basic predatory movements. So you oftentimes will take something like a burlap rag or like an old potato sack. Some people use an old piece of leather. They tie a piece of string to it and they just move it around. So if anybody's familiar with a flirt pole, the same idea, right? So they're just creating movement, and then the goal of the person who's harnessing this prey drive is to get the dog excited, to be stimulated, get them all excited and typically barking and frustrated. And then essentially we allow them to get what they want. So they get to bite the rag or the tug toy that we're using or whatever the case is. And so what we're doing with prey drive here is we are setting the dog up to succeed over and over and over and over, right? Yeah. So we teach them, the more you bark, the quicker you get the toy, right? Or the tug, or the more power that you come out with at the end of the leash, boom, you're going to get the reward quicker, that type of thing. Prey drive is also used to take pressure off of the dog if the dog has gone into a defensive drive, which we're going to talk about here in a second, because it's very arousing and stimulating and produces a lot of confidence in the dog. So it's used for a lot of different things, but ultimately it's used to create a lot of excitement and frustration so that we can actually harness that into biting a sleeve, biting a bite suit, getting the dog what they want. You can't force a dog to do this work, unfortunately. It just doesn't work that way. So that's essentially prey drive. Yeah. Defensive drive is along the same lines, and a lot of people find it difficult to see the difference, but it's pretty simple when you know some of the different cues to look for. I would highly suggest a book that's called Controlled Aggression, which you can get on Amazon. A guy named Jerry Bradshaw, who's the creator of PSA, Protection Sports America, wrote this book. And there's really good illustrations in there talking about the difference between prey drive and defense drive and all these different things. And so defense drive is basically where you're starting to add a bit of a threat to the dog. So some of these sports, you only use prey drive. For example, in French ring sport, you're building prey drive. You're getting the dog to bite in the bite suit on prey drive. It's just fun. It's like the best thing in the world for this dog. Some of these sports and jobs like police work are also going to require some defensive drive. And defensive drive is essentially just where you start putting a little bit of pressure and stress on the dog and showing them that if they retaliate through aggressive means, that they will basically win and the stress will go away, right? Yes. And so what you start doing here is you have that same dog, maybe on a harness with like a leash or a back tie, and basically you build them up in prey drive, you get them all excited. You add a little bit of stress. Maybe you start by just a little bit of eye contact. When that dog gives you a little deep guttural growl, maybe a little like this, right? You run away as fast as you can. And you show that dog, you growled at me. I am terrified of you and I'm going to run away. So you're showing the dog as the decoy that if you get stressed out and you show something guttural, something deep, or with a lot of these dogs, you'll see the tail go straight and right at the end, it'll flick down a little bit, right? If you watch for this, and you can see it in pet dogs too, it's straight, like it's not up. So it's like parallel to the ground. And then at the end, the last maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches, it just goes down, right? It's just a really weird little kink in the tail, right?
Yep.
You start to see these defensive traits starting to come in. When you're showing the dog is when you show me that you're a little bit stressed out and you're willing to show your teeth, you're willing to give me that guttural defensive growl, you're willing to come out and kind of snap at the end of the leash in a different facet, in a more personal way, then I'm going to run away and I'm going to show you that you're actually the one who's in charge. Okay. And so that's essentially what defensive drive is it becomes a battle where we show the dog over and over and over through thousands of repetitions that if you show aggression, you will win every single time. Okay. I'm going to talk about why this is so important for dog trainers to understand and realize, because when you start to realize this, everything changes in the way that you work with reactive and aggressive dogs. Here's the reason why. When you're working with predatory dogs, you see these dogs all the time, right? So, Bill, I'm sure that you've seen this. You might even have some of these dogs in right now. They walk down the sidewalk and they're just loud mouths, right? And they're barking at everybody and they're freaking out and they're hitting the end of the leash. That's what we call a predatory bark. So the high-pitched stuff is typically going to be predatory. A lot of the lower stuff typically is going to be more defensive. Okay. So the vast majority of leash reactivity that we deal with is based upon predatory stuff, right? And here's what's really fascinating about understanding this predatory stuff. Basically, what's happening is in the protection dog world or the sport world, what we're doing is we're trying to create that, right? We got the dog on a harness. We're adding frustration because he's on a relatively short leash. And when he sees that sleeve and the guy who's teasing him, we are praising him and we're touching him and we're letting him know that he's doing the right thing by barking and carrying on and whatever. Okay, take a snapshot of that picture, right? Now, what are these people doing before they come in for training with us? They've got the dog on a no-pull harness, okay? They're walking down the street and a dog comes around the corner and their dog starts getting a little bit too overstimulated.
It's okay. It's okay.
Right down on the dog.
Okay. You're okay. Everything's
It's
cool.
okay. It's just Rover from across the street. He's okay. He's a good boy. You can be. And the dog just gets worse and worse and worse. And the client has no idea that they're actually creating this manifestation of predatory aggression. They are helping it along. They are making it 5, 10, 100 times worse, right? What they do is not that much different than what we do when we're training these dogs and we're trying to make them super vocal and barky and snappy. They're doing exactly the same stuff, right? And so when you start to realize that, then you can also realize and you can go, okay, well, what would somebody do if they wanted to do the exact opposite of that? And one thing I found out really early when I was starting to work with these protection sport dogs and whatever in these different facets is that the people that are supposed to be working your dog, so typically these are called decoys, right? So they've got the bite sleeve on or they're wearing the bite suit. Every sport has a different name for them. But basically that person, there are very few decoys that are allowed to work, especially with the good protection dogs. The major reason behind that is you don't just let any old schmuck put on a bite suit, right?
Because my wife just got home, just so you know. So she just walked in.
That's okay.
Hey, sweetie, could you just shut the door for me here? So the bite suit.
Okay. So you don't just let any old schmuck put on the bite suit or put on the bite sleeve. The major reason behind this is because you can do catastrophic, terrible things, to a dog that has been trained for years and years and years in one fouled up session, right? If I put on that sleeve and I put a bit of stress on that dog and he goes, wait a second, you're not running away from me. If I don't know what I'm looking for, I can literally undo 5, 10 years of training. And so where this is really fascinating, though, Bill, is the fact that when you start to realize how susceptible these dogs are to having like an ultimate 100% humiliation in like one session, then you look at the pet dogs and you go, you're probably not as tough as you're making this out to be either, right? Because the people are bringing these protection dogs out and they're just coaxing the dog along, and there's so much work and repetition that goes into it, right? Yeah, these dogs are susceptible to be like, if I come in there and I do something that is the opposite of what that dog expects, that dog is going to be mush. I could ruin that dog forever. All I got to do is come in and look at him in the eyes, and he's expecting me to run. If I don't do that, if I walk into him and he doesn't get what he wants, like literally, I could take away 5 years of training, by like literally in an instant, okay? And so this is why when I'm evaluating reactive and aggressive dogs, and I've done this probably 5 times this week alone, the owner has the leash and the dog is losing its mind and lunging at me, right? Okay. All right. I say, all right, throw a muzzle on him. Okay. So they throw a muzzle on him. I say, bring him over to me. The dog muzzle punches me 2 or 3 times. I go, is that all you got? Seriously? All that in there, you're 115-pound Great Pyrenees who's lunging incessantly for 45 minutes, and you're only going to hit me twice? Are you serious? I grab his leash and I walk away with him, and he looks at me and he goes, I was not expecting that to happen. Yeah. Okay? Because these dogs are expecting that when somebody comes into their personal space, if they growl, that person is going to back away from them. And when that doesn't happen, they're like, they don't know what to do with it, right? And I'm sure every dog trainer that works with reactive and aggressive dogs has seen this a million times. You take the dog away from the owners, and they're just mush, most of them. They don't know what to do. It's just a total mental change for the dog. This is why I don't really focus on doing board and trains. There's lots of different reasons why I don't do board and trains, but the major reason is because the owners or the enablers, whether they like it or not, they haven't tried to do that, but they've been doing it by accident, essentially, through miscommunication. Obviously. And so what I need to do, I got to have them come in, and they need to be the ones that say, no, you don't do that anymore. You don't get to act that way anymore. If you act that way, there's going to be a correction. It doesn't happen this way. And then what we do is once the owner now has control over the dog, then we start to get other people to work with that dog. So we put the dog into our group classes, right? And the other dog has to pay attention to other people. Sit, down, come, heel, all that stuff. Give me his leash. All right, we're going to go over here and we're going to work with him, which is the exact opposite of what that dog expects, right? And so training these protection dogs and training these pet dogs when it comes to especially human aggression, it's very, very, very similar stuff.
I can see it. Well, let me say we have some comments here that I want to catch up on.
Sure, go ahead.
John Sparks says, my PP dogs work in social defense and fight. And that's a fight drive that there's referred social, defensive, prey, and fight. But fight is a really, really rare one, man. And so, but he says they start genetically
based. There's estimates that like maybe 5% of dogs that are specifically bred for protection work will have it. The vast majority of police dogs don't even have it. There are some dogs that do. In reality, most of the dogs that are claimed to be in fight drive, from what I gather, and again, I don't know. I'm sure John knows a hell of a lot more than I do about this stuff. But a lot of the dogs, fight drive and defense drive are essentially, they're very, very similar in a lot of ways. The fight drive dog just takes it to a completely different level where he is Colin McGregor. His entire life is wrapped up around, the angst of being number one. And the defensive dog is probably a little bit lower than that, where they're like, well, if they're at a bar and somebody's throwing punches, they'll get in there. But, their life doesn't revolve around trying to be number one and getting all the belts and all that kind of stuff. But yes, there is technically a fight drive. I don't typically talk about it because it's so incredibly rare and we just don't see it in pet dogs. I might have seen it 2 or 3 times in pet dogs, but it is another drive to be aware of. Yes.
Yeah, and he says, good book, The Controlled Aggression. I put up a link in the comments. It's only $25, and that's a good deal. Sometimes it can go upwards of $100 if it's available or not available.
Yeah.
What's this? Building CER triggers.
I don't know the acronym, but feel free to throw it in there.
Triggers. And he says all day, every day. And Denise, hello. And what is that? Joyreen says, hi. Hey, Joyreen. Hey, Dawn, my beautiful wife, who she's joining us out there in the living room.
Was that her for me or for you?
I don't know, babe. You just kind of left that open. Is that for me or is that for Ted? Is that which one? I don't know.
We're friends. We can joke like that.
So, but I see the connections that you're making, and especially, and John says that just like what you did, we start them in prey, and then we move to that defensive. But it's not the defensive that we're used to. We actually run away and be like, "Oh, good, you big bad dog," type of thing.
Right.
But when the owners inadvertently enable this behavior and don't make the connection because they anthropomorphize that dog, and we're nurturers by nature, right? And the dog isn't like that,
Right.
And so, haha, she says. Okay. Conditional emotional response, Denise. Very good. Yeah, Denise, you're absolutely right. Is up for discussion, Tom says. Ted is a handsome man. He is pretty handsome. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Denise. A conditioned emotional response, and these dogs, a lot of times, what we see is they just become the emotional dumping ground for these people. They put us in such a wonderful state of mind, no matter what's going on in our lives, and it's a wonderful. We love them so much, too much sometimes, where we think that love is all that they need instead of structure, boundaries, and routine. All that stuff is very as important, and I think that shows love and understanding even more than just saying it.
Yeah, all really good things there. Is that all the comments for now?
Wait, Jones has one more. Emotional response. Oh, same thing. Conditioned emotional responses, triggers. That's a CER. That's the acronym that he was using, and that's what
I think I got a couple of the CER triggers too.
Yep.
Okay.
So how do you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Any tips that you have for trainers to approach this kind of in a new way and view it through a new set of eyes? Let's hear or ears. Too.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that oftentimes people in the protection sport worlds are going to be using is called a back tie. And a back tie is basically just a rope or a leash that is connected to something that's sturdy and not going anywhere, right? Yeah. This is oftentimes used when they're building dogs up in prey drive. Typically, these dogs are on harnesses and that kind of thing. I use back ties in my shop. So anybody that sees any videos that I shoot in my shop, I've got a really sturdy back tie that oftentimes I'll use for different reasons, but mainly because I want to know how far that dog is going to be able to go, right? If I've got a piece of tape on the ground where I can say, okay, his mouth is not going to be able to get past here. If he tries to bite me, I know that I'm not within biting range. I don't have to freak out, move away, reinforce him. So back ties are used a lot in that type of world. I know a lot of trainers that also use it as well too, but that's kind of where that originated from.
I use it every day.
Yeah. Where dogs target is really, really critical. Now, typically a lot of the sport dogs are going to be trained to target in very specific areas. Some of the protection dogs too, depending on what they're doing. A lot of times those dogs will be trained to target in different areas. But the sport dogs typically are going to be more prey-driven dogs. They're typically going to be biting arms and legs and that kind of stuff. Traditionally, most of the fearful dogs that we work with as dog trainers, those dogs are going to be biting hands, arms, sometimes legs, feet, that kind of stuff.
Stop the movement. Whatever's
it's all
moving.
Movement. And oftentimes those dogs, those fearful dogs, also bite people in the face. And notoriously, it's children in the face because it's the closest thing that's next to them. A lot of people call me and they say, oh my God, my dog bit somebody in the face or whatever. And the vast majority of the time when a dog bites somebody in the face, that is just the closest thing to them. It's not that they were targeting for that. They were stressed out by something and they just snapped and it was just there. So a
lot of people will do this to the dog too.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's typically not, those are not really things of concern. The dogs typically that are of major concern for me, whether you're working with a police or protection dog, or you're working with a pet dog that has some very serious aggression, the dogs that honestly I am very cautious around are the dogs that target the chest and the back. Those dogs, a lot of people say like neck and stuff like that. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of targeting from serious dogs from the neck region. Usually those dogs are going to be like dog to dog aggression where they go for necks oftentimes too. But a lot of very, very serious cases of aggression that could lead to like predatory aggression where the dog would potentially try to kill somebody. The vast majority of those dogs target to the chest. I have an assumption why that happens or a hypothesis. I don't know if this is true. This is not backed up by any data. I don't think that there's any studies by it, but I believe that the dogs see that our body is radiating the most energy maybe from our heart region and they target from there. I don't know.
Nelson says that it's they're trying to disembowel us.
Yes. You see this with coyotes, right? Where the first thing they do when they attack a male dog is they go after the testicles. There's all kinds of weird and wonderful things when it comes to predatory nature. So when you have a dog that is aggressive, there's a few things to watch out for. One, if they're targeting chest area and they're not looking at your face or they're not looking at your eyes, those dogs are kind of like the make me dogs usually. They're looking right here. Usually these dogs are also very quiet. Okay, so I've done podcasts and stuff talking about predatory aggression. One of my favorite quotes, which is not by me, which is by a fellow dog trainer, Chad Mackin, who a lot of you guys probably know, is the predator does not communicate with the prey. So when you are working with a dog with predatory aggression, it is very hard to notice that aggression because it is usually very quick. There is usually a little bit of stalking. you or your dog or whatever could potentially be the prey and you don't know it. You have to be doing this a long time and evaluate hundreds, maybe thousands of dogs before you see it. And so a lot of trainers are not adequately seeing it. I see it quite often, unfortunately, from some of the dogs that we see come up from the South, some of the very dog aggressive pit bulls and pitty mixes and stuff that they bring up from Florida and Georgia. And the people at the rescues don't have enough knowledge to be able to see the predatory aggression for what it is, because these dogs aren't running around, running amok, trying to bark and lunge at everything. They're sitting there in their kennels or they're looking at other dogs and they're super quiet and they're waiting, they're plotting, they're scheming. And so these dogs are very, very serious, and you have to be very cautious around those dogs. Also be really cautious for some of the livestock guardian breeds. I'm starting to get a lot more of these Maramas and Pyrenees around, and these dogs can seriously hurt people, if not kill them.
Big boys.
They're big dogs, and when they go, and they stalk. They are not very vocal, which makes things very tricky. The vast majority of them do not growl before any type of attack. They stalk, which is really hard to see because to the untrained eye, it looks like they're just walking around and they're just kind of pacing. And so you got to really watch with those dogs. I see it quite often, and it's pretty scary when we see it. Some of those dogs can be pretty hardcore. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Well, and it's visceral too. You could feel. You could feel the hair on the back of your neck, and I call it like Spidey sense, man. There's just something that goes out when I'm working with this dog, and it's that, like you were saying, that guttural, that when they're like it's coming from deep within, like I want to hurt you, or something's going to happen here. I'm about ready to explode, type of signal, and we can feel that, man. It's our self-preservation mechanism that's going to kick in to be like, hey, what the hell are you doing here? And really quick, I got a comment, Ted. I see you have 3 books available. Which would you recommend I read first? And just so you know, while you were talking, I put a link to all 3 of your books: Thriving Dog Trainers, Prong Collar Training, Pet Dogs, and then also the new one, the e-collar training book. So do you have a reference or a recommendation for which one?
Just depends on what tickles your fancy. So Thriving Dog Trainers is basically the first book I wrote, which was to help other dog trainers that are struggling in their business or just want to, get some tips on how to take things to the next level. So that may be something of interest to you if you're a dog trainer or want to become a dog trainer. Could be valuable. There's an e-collar book. I wrote that simply because I could not find, I've scoured the world for an e-collar training book and it didn't exist. So I decided to write it. That may be of interest to you if that's a tool that you use with your dog or clients' dogs. And then the e-collar book is doing extremely well. I'm so happy. It's been received very, very well and is selling very well. And it is like nuts and bolts to the e-collar. A lot of trainers are telling me that they're buying it and they're learning a lot of things that they never really thought about. But it's also very simply written for the average dog owner as well too. So whatever title I think that resonates with you, Gina, feel free to take a crack at. They're also in Audible form too. So Thriving Dog Trainers and the e-collar training book are also. I also have some DVDs as well too.
He's not friendly from Mango Dogs, Mango Dogs Media. I mean, it's just what I like about this is that you actually work through the before and after cases, and you show the people, and it's just regular people. Yeah. Did you figure this stuff out? The protection of aggression correlation when you did this DVD?
I think it was around that time. I don't think that it had anything to do with shooting that DVD. Personally, if anybody's interested in that, they can go to mangodogsmedia.com and they can check it out there. I also did a DVD for e-collar training with e-collar technologies. If you want to check that out, send me an email, ted@mangodogs.com. I'll get you access to that if you want to check that out, which is at ecollar101.com. But it's just one of those things where like it slowly starts to solidify when hindsight starts to set in, where you go like, oh man, like I was doing that just off of reflex, but it was actually based in stuff that I learned before. So I don't think there was ever a light bulb moment, but over the years, I just had one little flicker happen here and a little flicker happen here. And then when I started to put it together, it was just like, oh my gosh, like there's.
Well, I think like, while you're doing these books too, man, you're organizing your mind in a different way, right? And so you're kind of reaching through all your experiences and observations, and in doing so, you're making connections that might not have been established while you were doing it. And that's why they say hindsight is always 20/20, right?
I highly suggest writing to people because it's cathartic, which is really nice. Right. It's a way to express yourself. It's creative. If you're not a writer, 2 of my books are in audio book form. I'm not much of a reader. I much prefer audio books too. So if anybody's interested, they can check some of my books out on audible.com. But it's good because like you said, Bill, it's all about processing through. And then you have to explain to yourself what you've been doing and why you're doing it. And I think if the 2 DVDs that I've done, the He's Not Friendly one, the aggression rehabilitation one that you showed there, and then the eCollar 101 DVDs that I did for eCollar Technologies, if I learned anything through doing those, is you literally have to sit down and like put pen to paper and like, this is what we're going to do. This is how I have to explain it. This is why this is supposed to work. I go through theory and all kinds of stuff. And so it really helps you think about like, okay, why does this work? Like, why, if I do this with this dog, does it have this outcome? And so I'm just a huge fan of creating, right? Whether it's writing a book, shooting a DVD, writing a blog post, doing a thing like this, it makes it so that you have to kind of think and process through. I'm a huge fan of it because that's, I think, the best way to learn is just by doing something where you have to force yourself to think through it.
Yep, they say knowledge through direct experience. That's gnosis, right? That's a totally different ballgame than just reading about something. You know, if you go there and experience it yourself, smell the smells and feel the feelings, you know, that's something that sticks with you for life. And so, and it's great that we can borrow, or people can borrow our scars as professionals. And that's what we do, is we help out people. John says, quit hugging, kissing dogs' faces. No, dude, I'm not going to. I can't help it.
I did it this morning with a dog. Yeah.
His name's Leonard. Right now. Yeah, there's some dogs that just deserve to be kissed.
Oh, they love it, man. It depends on the dog, obviously. I know what John's talking about.
Absolutely. And Joyreen says, silent dog fights are the scariest. I agree, man. Even as a dog professional, dude, we get riled up too. I mean, boom, it's explosive. It's chaotic. I mean, it's no joke, man. And that's where you have to know the subtle, like Ted was saying, that little tail out with a little slump down, you know, or subtle things that we pick up, the nuances. And dogs, they live in a world of split seconds too. And so, and then also we err on the side of caution a lot of times too. We'll take out scenarios that might lead towards conflict, but those silent ones are no joke.
I would also suggest too that dog trainers, all of us, myself included, we need to get better at like preparing for our lessons, you know, like I'll go into my shop early and I'll read through the chart with the dog and the client and everything, bring myself up to speed. What did we do last week? What type of aggression does this dog have? What are the triggers? All this kind of stuff, because it can get really easy to get complacent, and you only need to be complacent one time to forget, oh, this dog he's you think he's in for dog aggression, but he's actually in for human aggression, and you get your ass bit because, you forget, or you drop the ball a little bit because you got a bunch of different things in your mind. Like, you got to go into your You got to go into your training lesson and you think about the dog that you are training, and that's it. You don't think about what you want to do on the weekend. You don't think about all the text messages you got to get back to. You don't think about any of that stuff. You think about, this dog has the capability to kill me. That's what you
think about. What you were just saying about the decoy, you know, and you know, the progress that you're building up can be wiped clean in 1 second if you make the wrong move, and that's why you have to step carefully, and that's why you have to be focused, and especially when you're dealing with these cases, and that's why as you know, as a member of the general public, where you want to ask and make sure that you are dealing with a professional that have seen and have had beneficial outcomes to cases that are similar to your own. Okay. And just like, well, unless you're with Ted, that's like, well, I'll give it a shot for free. So yeah, silent dog fights are the worst. John Sparks says, Marbles, Corsos, Molasters will often go for the face check and chest neck, especially when they come at you with true intent. Well, those dogs, I mean, I'm 180 pounds, and some of those dogs can reach about my size, you know, and you know, they really, especially the Barbel that John had, he wanted to eat me. And then she's agreeing with Denise is saying, yes, Joy Reen, about the silent dog fights. Absolutely. Hey, Sue. Hey, Peter. Great to have you. And you're very welcome. She says, Dana says, thank you to Bill and Ted. And Dawn, my wife, says, Bill and Ted's excellent adventure. She is amazingly original. No.
Always a good
it's
time.
Ted and Bill. It's Ted and Bill. It's excellent. We're not Bill and Ted. We're Ted and Bill. So
there's another thing I learned too before, you know, like if anybody has any questions, feel free. I'd love to answer questions if anybody has any. But there's another thing that I learned too, looking back on that. I think oftentimes as dog trainers, we feel the need that when we're training a dog to do something, we have to work with them for at least an hour to an hour and a half, because that's what their client is paying us to do. If you work with me, if you come to shadow me or come to a seminar or something, I refuse to work with a dog for more than 15 or 20 minutes. Like, I will not do it, because the major reason behind that is when I'm teaching a dog something, proofing is a little bit different, but when I'm teaching a dog something, I know that their attention span to be able to learn and process is so incredibly short. So what I do is I start out just talking to the client. Here's what we're going to learn today. Here's why we're teaching it, all this good stuff. Okay, we go in, we do our little bit of training. The dog gets it, boom. Maybe they get it 3, 4, 5 times. You're done. We let the dog, you know, run over to the, you know, walk over to the bed, do whatever he wants, and lay down and process the information. He drives home from my facility. He's processing the information in the back of the car, right? And oftentimes we forget this as dog trainers. We're going to work them and work them and work them. And then people who do board and trains, and they're like, I got to work them and work them and work them 5 hours a day. No. When it comes to dog training, less is so much better. And if you're going to push it and you're going to rush the dog through in a week or two because you want to get the dog in and out, it is a massive disservice to the dog. Less is more, like we see on the screen there. So I learned this many years ago at a seminar I went to in Montreal for a French ring seminar. And I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young buck. And I had my dog there, and I was so excited. I drove 13, 14 hours to get to this seminar, and all I wanted to do was work my dog, right? And the decoys there had come in from France and from Mexico and everything. And they kept telling me, like, put your dog away. Like, put him away. Like, why are you doing this? And like, I had no understanding of what they were talking about. Like, I just drove 14 hours to get here. I want to work with my dog. Like, I'm not okay with 15 minutes and put him away. You know what I mean? Like, and they were just like, you don't get it. Like, you don't get it. You're doing a massive disservice to your dog. You're doing quantity. You're not doing quality. Like, we're trying to show you what to do when you go home so that you can train your friends to decoy your dog. It's not about you coming here and working your dog hour after hour. because all that's going to do is the dog is going to go from the session. He's going to lose the information because mentally he's going to dip and he's not going to learn anything. And you're going to end him on a low. The best thing to do when you're training protection, sports, all those different things, is you end the dog on a high note, which is why a lot of Schutz and IPO people, they do bite work. They do a few bites. They get the dog all jacked up when he's at his peak. They run around. They get him all frustrated. And then they run off with the sleeve, and the sleeve goes away. And the dog's sitting there going, I want that sleeve. I want that sleeve.
Always leave them wanting more.
The reason they do that is the dog is so anticipating the next time. The second they get out of that truck, the harness goes on them. They're like, where's that sleeve? I only got to bite it 3 times last time. It makes them so much more driven, so much more intense. It's shorter increments so they can learn and process through it a lot better. So that's probably one of the most, one of the biggest things I learned all those years ago, and I still use it to this day. I don't push dogs through stuff unless there's something that I very specifically have to teach that takes some duration. But for the most part, it's short and sweet. Get them to learn it, teach the client how to do it, and then they do that throughout the week, and then we start adding duration as we go along.
Well, and duration is part of proofing as well.
Yep.
I mean, we have the 4 variables of training: distance, distraction, duration, and location. And so we're always moving. We're always working on those as trainers and working on them with our own dogs to proof or to generalize the concept that we're introducing to this dog so that they get it. And they get it not just in your living room, but they get it out in the street. They get it in the playground. They get it in a supermarket, whatever the scenario is. And that's it. And I think that it goes in with a little anthropomorphication of like, if I want to do this, it's fun, and seeing the dog have fun and so I get it, and I do it too. I mean, it's great time, but yeah. And you know what, man, I have a dog now that I'm just so impressed with, like my little girl Sequoia, this little cattle dog, the one that's jumping in my arms, that's flying across I actually got her. She's sleeping always with me, man. She's sleeping right behind me. I don't know if you can see her right there. Can you see her? Yeah. But she's teaching me a lot, with just how loyal and how much she wants to please. And, I'm excited to see where I'm going to be taking this dog. And I've been working a lot with Omar von Mueller with some trick training and stuff like that. And, but she does have some, ever since, I mean, I remember when this dog was 3 months old, I got her home and I'm sitting there watching like a nature documentary, and this bear comes on the screen, and this little dog goes, really guttural growl and just really focused on the screen. And I'm like, oh man. And, so what do you recommend if from the very get-go, if somebody has a powerful breed, or if they think that they've maybe signed up for a little bit more that they can chew with the dog that they have? How do you recommend? I mean, you said that what you do with the dog is like, is that all you got, buddy, type of stuff? But how do you?
It really depends, right? Because are we talking about, is this dog too much to handle because he's got dog aggression, which is often the case? Is this dog too much to handle because he's got human aggression? Sometimes it's human and dog issues. Mm-hmm. Is it human aggression towards the owner? Like, that's a really hard thing to overcome that, you're going to need a really advanced trainer to help you work through. Right. So
yes.
It really depends on the context, but I don't usually suggest that people average dog owners try to navigate through those waters, especially when they're very, very dangerous. Right.
She was protecting you from the television bear.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, it's unique. And
for your honey.
What's that?
He was coming for your honey and blueberries.
Yes.
Yeah, I usually suggest, listen, find somebody that can help you. If you have a working dog breed, like a German Shepherd or something, you might be able to find a local Schützen club that can kind of help you through some of that stuff, right? But, find somebody that's going to be able to kind of walk you through it. When I was getting started many years ago, I had to connect with this guy in Australia because there was nobody anywhere near me that could help me, right? Now, luckily, a lot of my clients have become dog trainers, and there's tons of great balance trainers out there that can help people. But back in the day, I didn't have any options. So hopefully you live in an area where somebody can help you through things. There's so many different dynamics that go into it depending on the type of aggression, to be completely honest. The biggest thing that I see is like, don't let the dog do stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
structure is key, man.
Right.
I mean, structure everything. I mean, and that's it, and recognize, what your dog is bred for, and recognize the intrinsic desires and intuitive, or the motives that your dog has, what's important to them, fulfill that, but in a structured way. Use good equipment. E-collars. Don't skimp on that crap. I recommend ecollar.com. I have them branded myself, and I'll be doing a lot more e-collar work. I've really seen some wonderful results, and I've seen these collars save dogs' lives. And so, but it has to be done in the correct way, and you can't really substitute time. Just like Ted was saying, how about we repeat this over and over thousands of times? That's it. Repetition is the mother of learning with all living creatures. And you can't expect, we belong to a push button society where literally, I mean, we're talking, you're in Nova Scotia, I'm in Seattle, Washington, across the country here. And everybody, we got 14 live viewers. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We love having you watching us right now. And just something that we put together. And technology is a wonderful thing, but all of these new technological advancements that bring us instant gratification kind of skews the way that we view behavior. And we need to be patient. We need to keep our eye on the big prize. And working with these aggression cases, a lot of times it's not easy. It's not easy, especially when we have silent, real serious dogs. And so,
if you don't know the difference between a serious dog and an easy dog, like, you need to find somebody that can help you evaluate that, because if you have a serious dog and you don't know that, you could be in a really dangerous situation.
Well, and on the flip side too, if you have, somebody telling you to put down your dog, go to somebody else, man, and just see, 100%. Because you can never take that needle back. And, I'm working with the dog now, and I mean, she's not out of the clear, but she was recommended to be euthanized. And I mean, hundreds of dogs have been recommended to be euthanized that I've worked with by other trainers. And I'm so thankful that they didn't do that. And they came to me because we fixed the problem. And a lot of times these people, and if you're working with a difficult dog, you might be somebody in the future that's going to help somebody else with their difficult dogs. And so use, just like what Ted was saying, through experience, use your experiences.
I was lucky. I just had people asking for it. So I started doing it. I just did it for free. And then I just asked people, after working with aggressive dogs for a while, I was like, well, I can't do this for free forever. Do you want to pay me a little bit of money? And then they would just be like, yeah, how much do you charge? I was like, I don't know. What do you want to pay me? And they would just kick me a couple $20 bills every once in a while or whatever. Like, it wasn't that much money. But I was fine with it because I was learning. I was constantly learning. And if I could have done anything differently, I would have gotten a mentor sooner. I learned a lot on my own, and I learned a lot through reading books and going to seminars and stuff, but it really wasn't until I started to link up with some high-end trainers that I expedited my learning curve exponentially. And I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours training aggressive dogs. It's essentially all that I work with. So you learn it over time, but if I could offer anybody some advice that might be interested in working with aggressive dogs, like, train with somebody that knows what they're doing. Train with somebody who's done it many hundreds or thousands of times, and they're going to expedite that process for you, right? And I'm very vocal about the fact that I believed that I was a good dog trainer before I met Duke Ferguson. And then I saw what a good dog trainer actually was, and I was like, well, clearly I am not a good dog trainer if he's a good dog trainer. Mm-hmm. He taught me what he taught me. He learned from Fred Hassan and Bart Bellin and all of these guys. And so he learned it from up here, and it just through osmosis just kept going down through the generations. And what he taught me 30 years worth of knowledge from stuff that he learned from these other guys that he had learned in a relatively short amount of time. And so, this is something I think about oftentimes, where I love learning new things, right? Like, now that I'm starting to write books, like, I'm not a great writer. I just write about dog training. I can't even spell. I have an editor for that. So, but I want to learn how to be a great writer at some point. So the best option for me to do that is to like pay a good writer to actually like help me. Like, this is how you structure a paragraph. Like, this is how you tell a story and stuff. Yes. And I would assume that I would be able to expedite that learning curve so much quicker if I have somebody showing me all of the secrets and the tips and all that kind of stuff. And there's actually books that can really help you through. Stephen King's got a really good book, and there's a really good book on writing called Bird by Bird. And there's some books that have kind of like helped process along. But if you're thinking like, hey, I want to learn more about aggressive dogs, like, you can do it all day long on your own, and you can kind of like trial and error like I did. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to get somewhere really quickly, best way to do it, in my opinion, is to like find somebody, whether they're local or you talk to them online or whatever. You send them videos of dogs that you're working with. There's all kinds of different ways to go about it. Like, I have mastermind groups that people can attend. I have dog training forums online. I do seminars. I'm doing my shadow programs again, so people are coming to shadow me again.
And we're going to start a paid group here pretty soon too. We've been talking about that. And then I also have my paid group here. Let me plug that really quick. If you guys are interested, I just started a paid group. It's only $19.95 a month, bowwowbill.live. And you will be able to see the dogs that I'm working with. I'm working with my own dogs as well. I have a rescue that I'm rehabbing currently, and then I'll be doing some exclusive interviews, some book reviews, and some good content on there. So it's a bowwowbill.live, and $20 a month. It's a great time. We already have some people that have joined that, and I appreciate everybody's support. It's with your support that I'm able to do this type of stuff and live my dreams and learn as much as I can about these dogs, and then also share what I learn in a live format. So, and I also put up a link to that Bird by Bird that you were just talking about.
Stephen King on writing.
Stephen King on writing. I'll find one for there too. So, and check out bowwowbill.live. And then here we go. How does one find out about your training forums online, Ted?
So, Dana, are you on Facebook? I assume that you're on Facebook.
Yeah, everybody's on Facebook if they're commenting here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So feel free to I don't know if you're a friend of mine on Facebook. Add me as a friend. Send me a message, and or if that's not a possibility for whatever reason, send me an email at ted@mangodogs.com. I'll add you to a couple of groups, and then we can go from there if you have any interest. I also have my my Facebook page for my business, which is facebook.com/mangodogs, where you can check out my blogs and some of my videos that I put on for clients and stuff like that. But that's the best way to get a hold of me. Send me a private message, Facebook, and we can get you added onto that and get you into our community.
Yep.
Bill's a part of that community and has been for many years. We're all about connecting dog trainers together and just being able to learn from one another. So it's great.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about, we have so many dogs that are being put down here in America every single year that we better learn how to cooperate together to fix this problem. It's not necessarily about competition all the time. And there's plenty of dogs out here for everybody. And especially if you're doing really, really good work, let those dogs be the one to show you that. Here Sue says, Sue is a member of my paid group, bowwowbill.live. She says, your group is awesome, Bill. I'm learning so much from watching you work with your adorable dogs. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love working with them, and people will get value at watching professionals work through, and I think that they see sometimes how we work through struggles and
Totally.
the dog not getting it. And it's not just perfect for us. When you see us out and with our demo dogs and stuff, and we look all nice and polished, you don't see the thousands of hours that we spent practicing, and so that's something that you can see me.
Yeah.
On the back end, kind of a unique glimpse, and it's brand new. We just started it. So thank you so much, Sue. It's so good to have you be part of that group.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept. I definitely suggest I'm also on Bill's group. It's a really cool concept to see, like, it's kind of that inward view of like, hey, like, I'm training this dog. Like, you want to watch and ask questions and stuff. Like, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and the equipment that I use, I'll give you links to everything. I mean, I'm an open book, and that's it. If you ask a question and I don't have the answer, then I will try to help you find it. Yeah, and I love learning. That's why we're here. We're here to create. We're here to learn, and we're here to share that knowledge with our fellow human beings. And so, James from Down Under just says hello. Aren't you headed down under here pretty soon too, dude?
Yeah, we're still
ironing out the wrinkles.
We're ironing out the wrinkles. The Westall family in Perth is doing a fantastic job. There's also a crew of local dog trainers and dog owners that are doing a lot of work trying to get me out there. So I should be going like late November, early December for a couple of weeks. That's the way that it looks right now. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's for sure.
So Sue, I've worked with Sue and Jasper. She's got a 7-month-old Australian Shepherd, and she wants to know about the short training sessions are better than long ones. Just wondering approximately how long would you consider a short session to be for a 7-month-old male Aussie?
So one thing that I didn't stipulate, and I would love to hear your thought on this. It might be the same as mine, but I didn't stipulate short sessions, but also very frequent sessions. So you can do 2, 3, 4 sessions a day. You just want to keep it maybe 10, 15 minutes maximum. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, just like what you said, you want to capture that sweet spot. And you want those dogs, always wanting more. And especially when they start are starting to just learn the concepts. We want them, I tell them it's like an IQ puzzle we're giving the dog to just kind of chew over, and we're looking for those aha moments, and we're giving them, the tools that are going to help them to reaffirm that they are getting it. But yeah, short sessions, but remember the soak time. So use that crate. You let that dog, have the dog go off in an area like Ted was saying, either in the client's car when they're driving away from his facility, or if the dog goes over and lays on the bed or something like that. I like to do the short sessions. In fact, I like to isolate the dog into the crate, do a short session right back in the crate. And then just let them, because they're going from void of stimulus out to stimulus, learn, back in there. And then that's that processing. We call it soak time, letting that information soak in. 20 minutes at the most. But when we're starting to proof the concepts and starting to, once the dog gets it, and then we're starting to work on duration, like a place command, for instance, then I'm working on it for, I ask people, how long does it take you to use the restroom? How long does it take you to do a conference call? How long does it take you to cook dinner? Overlay this all with your life, and don't really structure it necessarily by the clock, but by the tasks that are going to be complemented by this dog's behavior with that. Okay, so
totally agree. There's a difference between teaching, and that's another thing I didn't really talk about. The difference between teaching and proofing and generalizing, which is something that you kind of grasped on, right? When you're teaching, you want to remember that, like, cramming for exams doesn't work very well, right? So you want to teach in short increments. But proofing and generalizing is like, okay, well, now you know the knowledge that you learned in college, and you have to use it all day on your day-to-day job for 8 hours a day. So once it's taught, now you can start to integrate it into longer-term tasks and jobs that might be utilized for hours on end without a break once the dog has already learned it, right?
Yep. And that's that maintenance. And I mean, but that's also that proofing really needs to be done long. I mean, just because a dog does it once doesn't mean that they get it. We need to do it like Ted was saying earlier, and like I was repeating about repetition being the mother of learning. The same thing when we proof a concept. We have to do it over and over and over and over again. And so that dog has a great understanding of what to expect. And then anything that deviates from that is going to throw a wrench in that dog's program, right? And so, and then that's where we have a lot of times with behavioral issues. When I'm first looking at a dog, especially with uncontrolled aggression or unpredictable aggression, so to speak, I'm taking a 30,000-foot view of when this happened and starting to look at a trigger or something that happened in this dog's life that maybe threw a wrench into the program. And so we can kind of right the course, so to speak.
Yeah, it's always good to have feedback on why the dog is doing the things that they're doing, for sure. There's plenty of times when we don't have the answers, and I tell my clients, I don't know why your dog is doing that, but I sure as heck know how to fix it.
Yeah, totally. Yep, absolutely.
Like, man. I don't know, you got him when he was 8 years old, and he's been through like 4 different homes, and like, I don't know why he's doing all this stuff. Like,
who knows what he was up to?
I had all the answers. I do know how to get him to stop pulling on the leash and jumping up on people at the door and peeing on your bed. So I don't know why, but
hey, James says my home is open for you. So, and then Jackie says it's coming together in Perth. So, yeah, you'll be down under before you know it. It might have 2 summers, man. If you're going to be down there when it's warm and it's going to be cold up there.
That would be nice. Either all summer or all winter.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you think, man? Is there anything else that you'd like to add? I know that we've covered quite a bit, and I love what we've talked about here, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I think that hopefully people can learn a thing or two from this. And, if there's anything that I missed potentially, feel free to send me an email, ted@mangodogs.com. And maybe I'm thinking about things differently, or maybe there's something I'm missing and you want to enlighten me on that. I would love to learn that from you guys. And I'm also starting to do shadows again. I have a few spots open in November. So that's something you might be interested in. If you want to learn how to work with aggressive dogs, come out to Nova Scotia, take things to the next level. I got probably 1 or 2 more spots open, I think, and probably be doing some in 2019 as well, too. We'll see what happens. But if that's something that interests you, again, send me an email, ted@mangodogs.com, and we'll go from there.
I'm putting a link right now. Contact Ted for shadow or questions and shadow information, ted@mangodogs.com. I think I got it right. Let me see. Really enjoyed this. Thanks, guys. Oh, thank you so much for being here, Jackie. And thank you so much for being part of my paid group as well. And yeah, looks like I got it right. So I think we're going to sign off here, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. And I'll be back live again coming up on Friday. So check that out. And
you have Larry Crone on Friday, don't you?
I do.
Cool.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting him. Never met him or spoken with him, but we've been messaging back and forth. And I read his book as well. And I just look forward to chatting. And I always pick up, gleams, little pearls from all my buddies, all my colleagues. Yeah. And I think that it's so cool that we can do this. And I appreciate you, Ted, and I appreciate giving me your time today. And thank you, buddy. I look forward to
it. You. Thanks for doing this. It's huge for people to. Hey man, when you and I first started, we didn't have stuff like this, right? Like we'd have to drive 8 hours just to have a conversation about dogs. So it's pretty incredible what you're doing through your lives and stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's it. That's all I want is I want to help dogs. And that's why I do this. And that's, we have paid content, but that's why I want to keep this stuff free and just get it out there. I need to upload a bunch more of these to my YouTube videos. But Dana says, thank you, gentlemen. That was great. Thank you for being here, Dana. All right. And hold on, Ted. I'll say goodbye to you in the studio here. And but I'll say goodbye to everybody else. Thank you, everybody. Join us next on one of our next great adventures coming up here shortly. Bye, everybody.
See ya.